Hello, welcome back to another pen talk. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for jumping on and following me on my journey. It's always fun to have some company when you travel. This is a pen that a lot of people have had some buzz on, so I ordered one just so I could show it to you and also enjoy it myself. A couple of Moonmans I've gotten recently been without packaging because this can raise the price a lot, but this pen only comes in this package. I think it's considered an upscale pen by Moonman's characteristics. It looks like inventory sticker there for January 16th of 2020, so it was made just a few weeks ago. And it also has another sticker here on the back. This is basically the guarantee seal, quality seal, and it's an M800 02F. So the M seems to be left off of most of the descriptions when I see the pen. Let me give you a little hint of what the pen is. So let's take the cover off. Nice cardboard box. We have an instruction manual, which we've seen before. This is the one that has all those different filling systems. And now we have an example of the piston version of the filling system. You know, cleaning instructions, care instructions, really nice. And we see the pen. This is a box we've seen before. I think the C1 was the first one that was in this style of box. And we see a pen that screams amber to me. And we'll do a comparison later on to my amber pens from Pen BBS. We have this nice tag here. We'll give you some translations on the tag. And of course that slips off. And we have a roller clip, kind of a first for me in a Chinese pen. Yeah, it's well done, nice curve to it. It'll fit over some thick fabric as well as that rotating ball there, giving you an ability of moving it over a fabric without having it tear it. Some nice cap bands there, a band at the top, a band at the bottom. The pen feels good, is like most of the turned acrylics coming out of China. They're doing an excellent job on polishing and finishing, and the seams fit very, very well. Let's take the cap off. A little bit over 1 1/4 turns, which is really nice. So we'll see something else that we haven't seen on a Chinese pen of recent lore, is we see a Boc Nib. This only came in fine, which they also call 0.5 millimeters, and that is a fine nib. So that's one of the challenges I find, and I did take this apart, so I did put that back in place. That's not how it was delivered to me. Nice section here of the same material as the body and cap. Different style design, but then this is kind of reminiscent of an Italian pen that has a lot of similar design traits to this one. It fits okay in the hand, unposted. It's a fairly light pen, and that's the first thing that struck me when I picked it up, is when you're paying $45 for a Chinese pen, you would expect to have a little bit more weight to it, but they could have had a little bit thicker acrylic. Yeah, they could have done a few things to add the weight to it. I don't have the Italian pen this is based on to be able to compare it, but we're going to look and review the pen that I have in my hand. And posted, it also feels fine. That cap posts deeply, it posts securely, and it doesn't really change the balance much. I've disassembled the 600, just basically pulled the feed out of the nib collar here. It's a nice number 6 Boc Nib, a Schmidt converter, and it is definitely of the amber family, if not an actual amber style resin. Everything here is fairly common, so if you have any other number 6 nibs, Yovo, Bock, they'll fit. And it's a standard size converter, so international cartridges will work if that's what you'd like to use. This end cap in the finial is threaded, but it doesn't come off. Hopefully, I think it's glued on there. Something that I think probably is just a good part of the design. Same thing with the cap, but I'm not going to take it apart. There's no need to, but I would assume that. And inside, it's just the acrylic, but it has that machined ledge in there, which will match up to the bottom of the section. So I expect we'll get a decent amount of longevity on the nib staying wet if it's capped for a while without writing. I've changed my lighting to just sunlight, and the camera will pick up a little bit difference in this resin. I figured I would do an LED drive-by. The resin is fairly transparent in most spots, except for some spots where it's a little bit less transparent. You can see those threads on that pseudo blind cap that's there. The cap is a similar type of material, obviously. And the drive-in with the LED will show you that same type of thing. And there's those threads that hold that down there. There's no metal inside the cap, so that's always good. We're not going to get any problems with rusting or anything like that. And no liner, but you can see that ledge in there, hopefully, as we get more light on the subject. That's the pen. We unscrew the section, and we see a metal insert there with labeled Moonman, which is common with the upscale Moonmans. The M600s have it. Here we have a converter. I'll call it a Schmidt converter. It's a standard international converter. I think it's a low-end converter because this is all one piece. Maybe some decent plastic. I haven't had any issues with these. It has just that little plastic ball agitator in it. There's a deep seated and it fits well there. So overall, it's a very well-made pen. I'd put the standards up against any turned acrylic pen that's in the marketplace. And other than Pen BBS, most turned acrylics like this are substantially more money. Let's compare it to some other amber pens. So here are my 3 Pen BBS amber pens. I do love the finish, but I just haven't gone gaga over getting every model that I can get in the finish, even if I had an opportunity to get it. Next to it is the 355, which I think is the closest pen to compare. Very similar to design elements with the squared ends. This is that draw filler pen. Here's a 308, which is that classic, bullet-shaped design. And here's a 469, which is a double-ended pen. As you can see, as I rotate it, the variations that are in this acrylic. And after looking at all these 4 pens, I would definitely say that the Moonman 800 is using the exact same acrylic stock that Pen BBS is using. Also interesting to compare weights. Like I mentioned, this felt a little bit light, so the 355 definitely feels heavier. The 308 is lighter, but that's part of the design, and the 469, as you can see, is inked up and would throw off the balance. But I do think that, from a feel viewpoint and a writing viewpoint, the 800 is okay, but not that much better than their other pens. So posted, the 355 wins the overall posted length battle, if there is such a thing, with the 800 coming in second, the 308, and the 469 doesn't post, so we're just having it there. One of the things I will say from an aesthetics viewpoint is I feel that the gold trim of the 800 really works well with that amber resin. The two-tone nib works well, and I think it's aesthetically more pleasing, at least to me, than the silver trim on these 2 Pen BBS amber pens. Let's zoom in on the section because there's some interesting things there. The 800 certainly has a much differently shaped section to it. A section when I wrote with the Italian equivalent of this pen wasn't my favorite. We'll see if this one will grow on me or not. The 355 and the 308 have a more traditional section, and I find both of these to be extremely comfortable to write with. And the 469 is a little bit more concave with less as a lip, but is also a very comfortable writer from my perspective. And I really do like the two-tone Boc nib. I think that sets this pen apart from the other nibs. And of course, this is that amber is a cat nib, which is one of the trademarks of this amber material in a Pen BBS pen. I thought it'd be interesting to compare these two Moonman pens. And I'm comparing them for two reasons. One, price point. We have a $45 pen, we have a $55 pen. And that could be plus $5 or $10 depending upon where you buy and when you buy and what finish you get. Both of these are made of amazing acrylics in my mind, but amber is obviously one that's used more by Pen BBS, where this checkered one, they only made one Pen BBS one. It was a different one, kind of like a white and brown check, but equally impressive. The other thing these two pens share in common is a German nib. This one has a Schmidt nib in it, which is not my favorite and does not write as well, at least in these examples, as the Bock in the M800. But they both have similar design characteristics. Two bands here at the end of the cap. You know, your band here to hold your clip in. This has a ball clip. This has that roller at the end of the clip. Both of them have a top finial. This one is the dual fold model where it's black. This one is the same color as the pen. And the same with the blind caps at the bottom. You have a metal ring separating the blind cap from the barrel, and here you have it also. Let's look at the sections. Both pens are fairly long posted. This is 6.5 inches and this is close to 7 inches, which is a long pen in your hand when you post it. They both, the M600 is not a great poster. The M800 is a better poster, but you know, if you don't like a long pen, and you may not like either of these posted, but the M600 definitely is more of a back-weighted when it's posted. The sections in nib is where these pens certainly start to diverge quite a bit. The M600 has more of a traditional section. You have a metal band top and bottom, solid gold nib. In the M800, you have a two-tone nib, which I have to admit, aesthetically, it looks pleasing. The Bock imprint here is nicer than the Schmidt one. This also has that section, which is not my favorite. Both of these sections are about the same length, but this shape and design fits my writing more than this shape and design fits my writing. Both of them have a metal band between the section and the barrel. This one has another metal band here, just probably as a design element. And both of these are cartridge converter, etc., etc. But you know, it's an interesting example, and the M600 is a little bit heavier, so there's more material in it. Both of them have a metal insert into the section, which I think lends to stability, lets the converter, I think, seat more deeply and more securely. So all of those things are what I consider more of a high-end design characteristic, and these pens share that. If I was to choose between one of these that I had to live with, I'd go with the M600, basically because I enjoy writing with it better. And if I'm not happy with the Schmidt nib, it's easy to swap out for many, many other number 6 nibs. And the same you could do with the Boc nib in the M800. So I chose this ink to put into the pen. I got 5 new Pen BBS inks. This is the one that comes in the smaller 15 milliliter bottle. This is 366, and I did shake this one up, and it does have a little bit of glitter in it, but just a little bit. Let's look at the color card. It's an interesting color. It's definitely in the green family, but there's another component to it that I really can't identify. And I think you can catch a little bit of sparkle there, but the chromatography I thought was very unique and very interesting. You know, there's a line of pink down here at the bottom, goes up, and then there seems to be a little bit of like a yellowish there's a name for that color, I don't know, like amber color, and then an interesting blue. Again, let's see how it works in the pen, because so far the two of these new Pen BBS inks that I've used, I've been very happy with. So here we are, ready for that all-important how does it write part of the video. The cap unscrews with about 1 1/4 turns, which is nice. The threads here are pretty fine, but one problem I have is when you go to recap the pen, normally you just slide the barrel in and the threads engage, but as you can see, they don't engage. So you need to put a little bit of pressure on it. And I think there's a tolerance mismatch between the start of these threads and the threads in the cap. And that's just something that in a pen that is expensive by Chinese standards, I don't think that's something that should be. So therefore, it detracts from my enjoyment of the pen. Aesthetically, I find it to be excellent, but then we know that they were inspired by another pen to create this pen. The other aspect is this section, which is still not my favorite because you tend to slip your fingers down on the section, and there's really a kind of a really small sweet spot here. And yes, you can hold it anywhere, and it's really not sharp or intrusive, but it's just that I don't like my fingers being forced into one area, and I enjoy a little bit of a flare out at the end, so you kind of know, but I find my fingers can easily slip down and be on the nib without any restrictions or any feedback. And there is that step down is pronounced, at least on my fingers. We'll give you the dimensions of that section so you can put it in perspective, but it is, like I say, it's on the small side, it's on the short side, and it's not a design that I favored. And when I first wrote with a pen with this type of section, that was my first response, and that hasn't changed. As I discussed, it posts deeply, it posts securely. It doesn't really change the balance that much. We give you those weights of the pen and cap and company. So overall, am I happy with this pen that I purchased it and it's in my collection? Yes. Do I think the other colors look great? Yes, they look phenomenal. Did I get amber and I already had a lot of amber? Yes, but I wanted to have a resin that I could compare. And the other resins, I don't have it any colors. In fact, I don't think I've seen any pens in that style of resin in those colors. And I do like the gold trim with this amber resin. I think it's an excellent trim color combination, and to me much more pleasing to the eye than the silver trim on Pen BBS. So let's see how this Bock fine nib performs. So we heard the nib on paper. When I first put nib to paper, I was very happy. I am not a fine and extra fine nib guy, but as a fine nib goes, this is as good as they get. It is fairly wet. I've grown to really enjoy this color. It changes as it dries, so that's kind of nice. It starts out lighter and gets darker. It has some decent shading to it, even in this fine nib. So another great combo. So I've been on a real roll. The last 3 pens I've gotten have been excellent writers, and I feel very fortunate to have those experiences. What I find is I hold the pen up a little bit higher, kind of on those threads, and it seems to work better for me there. That's a diameter that I'm comfortable with. And I stay away from the end of the section where the nib is. This is also a pen you could easily write with for hours on end because it is fairly light and that nib just glides across the paper. And as a fine nib, you can write small, which is one of those features of a fine nib. Extra fine, you could write even smaller, but after a while, how small is sensible and reasonable. So let's rate this pen. I'm going to give it a 9.3. One check for the nib and one check for the aesthetics. Let's look at the details. So I'm ranking this pen as a standalone pen, not taking into consideration the origins of the design. So I'm going to give the design 3 checks. It's aesthetically pleasing, it's functional, it's ergonomic, and I do think I can eventually get used to this section. It'll never be my favorite, but it works. Engineering-wise, we're going to give it 2 checks, and build is going to be 2.5. And the reason why the difference that goes, I call the engineering problem, is why that threading of the cap onto the barrel is just a little bit wonky, but it's built very well. Writing gets 3 checks. The look gets 3 checks. That's phenomenal, and I'd give it another half. As far as value goes, that's a really tough one. I'm going to give it 1 check. So this is about $45 now on eBay. Who knows what it might change into. I saw on one of the websites that somebody said it's now $10 more than it used to be. I saw this when it first came out, and it's always been north of $40, so I'm not certain what that change is. Sometimes these pens become less expensive over time as the quantity increases and more sellers have it, but this doesn't seem to have spread to the internet to a lot of sellers, so I have a feeling it'll retain its price until it becomes sold out. So would I recommend this pen? Yes, I think it's a great pen. I think if you enjoy what is here. Now, if you compare it to other Chinese pens like Pen BBS or whatever, you might say that, gee, I can get that same acrylic in a pen that's probably more ergonomically favorable to me. You're not going to get a Boc Nib in it, but then you could put a Boc Nib in that pen, but then you're probably into this price range for this pen if you do that. But the Pen BBS nibs, I think, are great. I think they are comparable to this nib. This nib just has a different writing feel to it than the Pen BBS nibs. It's a little wetter, a little smoother. So if those are things that appeal to you, then this nib would be preference. So hopefully you've enjoyed this view of a pen that I think is changing the bar again for Chinese pen design, materials, craftsmanship, just making a great writing instrument that is form and function working together very, very well. So we've reached the end of this video, so thank you for watching. May you find a great pen to use to put ink on paper, and may you find a great ink to go into that pen that works well and brings a smile to your face, and put some marks on paper with that instrument. So this is the end of this video, and we will say bye until the next video. And this is a very consistent pen writing and nice ink that I now have added to my collection of inks.